Hey guys, this is my team for the Super Rugby Pacific Fantasy Official Competition. Tonight, 7 PM New Zealand time, the first round begins. You want to get your team in by then if you haven't already, so that you're not leaving any points on the table. In this video, we're going to talk about the picks I've made, why I've picked them, but I'm also going to go over all the other top picks in each position, what their pros and cons are, why you may or may not want to go for them. Maybe it'll help you make your own picks and get you on the road to winning that $10,000. Now, first up, I've got the props. I've gone with Xavier Numere and Angus Bell, both props who are pretty busy around the park. They tackle well, but in particular, they carry really well. They get those tackle busts that are 2 points each. Another thing you have to consider with this competition is that props, they get, well, the whole front row gets 3 points for every successful scrum. That's a lot of points. You don't just need to think about who's busy around the park. You do need to look at the fixtures, look at the matchups, have a think about how the scrum's going to go in each game. It's round one. It's kind of difficult to tell how things are going to go. But for these first two matchups, and I spoke about it in my matchup round preview, my last video, I do have concerns about the front rows for the Hurricanes and the Highlanders in terms of how they're going to match up against these Waratahs and Crusaders front rows. I feel like the latter teams, they might be at a bit of an advantage and maybe getting the edge there, and that could reward the props in those teams accordingly. With that being said though, obviously I have picked Xavier Numere, and I've done that. Even though the Hurricane scrum, I think it'll be under pressure, I've just done that just because I don't feel the other options are that great. And he's so good around the park, I'm just hoping it'll make up for it. Now, I've arranged these players here by percent selected. You can see Tamati Williams, he's the number one pick. And you're probably wondering if I think the Crusaders scrum is going to have the edge on the Hurricanes, why I wouldn't pick him. The simple answer is, if you look at his season stats, obviously last year he didn't have much game time, but the year before, he doesn't actually rack up the stats that do great for fantasy. You look here at his 2023 stats, he got a lot more game time than he did last year. Not bad stats at all. 8-to-1 carry to tackle bust ratio, bit over 2-to-1 for meters per carry. Tackles per minute, not particularly high. Carries per minute, pretty average for a prop. Definitely a great player. Great player doesn't necessarily mean great fantasy pick. He's a lot better now than he was 2 years ago, but I'm still not necessarily convinced that it is going to translate. So that's about the long and short of it for Tamati Williams. When it comes to Ethan de Groot, he's the next most picked, almost by the same amount, 38%. We look at the stats here again. These are 2024 stats. I've brought up Ethan de Groot and Angus Bell as well. You can see de Groot, not exactly a stats machine, does have a very high tackle work rate, which is great. But you look at his carries, not racking up huge amounts of tackle busts, not getting huge meters per carry. Did score a try, that's great. Does get a few turnovers, Angus Bell doesn't. But otherwise, Angus Bell in comparison, you can see he is getting those tackle busts when he carries, and we know he is a really effective carrier. But I feel like this Waratahs scrum in this particular matchup, it might have the edge on the Highlanders. De Groot, he's an excellent scrummager. That is his forte. He'll be opposite Taniela Tupou in this matchup. It's going to be a huge battle. De Groot, he doesn't really have that much more support with him in this matchup. Soene Vikina at hooker, Saola Ma'u, not familiar with him. But yeah, I feel like Waratahs, they will have the edge there. And again, getting those scrum wins, that's going to be really important. You look at last year's team season stats as well. Waratahs scrum success, pretty high. Highlanders, they're a bit behind back here. It is a new year, yo. Different team, different front rows. That's why I'm picking Angus Bell over Ethan de Groot and over to Mighty Williams. You do have other good options here though. Taniela Tupou, again, some people have picked him. Again, he doesn't actually rack up the points if you go and look at his seasonal stats. Ofatuanga Fasi, he is busy. He racks up a lot of carries, but he doesn't get from them tackle busts or anything else like that gets extra points. He really is just hitting it up. He did score a lot of tries last year, so if you were picking him for fantasy, then he would have rewarded you in those games. But when he's not scoring tries, he really just is not getting a lot of points in general. So you would not be getting consistent points out of him by going with him. And once you start getting down here where you sort of get beyond Fletcher, Newell, Renata, again, you got guys down here. This is about anywhere sort of above this point is where I'd be looking. Below that, nothing particularly appealing is going on down there. Now with hookers, we've got three pretty interesting and very disparate options here. You can see Riccitelli's been chosen the most, followed by Pollard from the Brumbies and Canavere from the Indrua. All good options, really hard to pick here. The thing with Riccitelli is that he's super reliable. I think if you don't know what to do, you can't go wrong with Ricky, but you do need to put a lot of thought into this position. Like hooker will get a lot of points because they get scrum points, they get line out points, they get more tries, and that's before you add on all your stuff, your meters made, your tackle busts, all that busy around the park type stuff, your tackles. So hookers are really powerful. Now, we come over here, look at some stats. Ricky got so many minutes last year for the Blues. Pretty good stats, high work rate, high carries per minute, and high tackles per minute. You look at the amount of carries he has, 140, that's pretty immense for a front rower. The tackle busts he has from that, and even the meters aren't massive. I mean, that's less than 2 meters per carry, and a pretty poor ratio for busting tackles. Doesn't get a huge amount of turnovers either, but I mean, he got 5 tries, and that's what you get when you're the starting hooker at probably the best team in the tournament, the former champions, and you have a forward-focused game plan and have a decent set piece. So he's never a bad pick, Riccitelli, but he's also, he's not really racking up points on a per carry basis. He's not doing it efficiently. Now, Billy Pollard, he's the next most popular pick. I don't know anything about this guy, but I can tell you why he's been picked, and it's because strong maul. So hookers for the Brumbies, they've always been excellent fantasy rugby picks. The Brumbies, they're playing the Indrua, who aren't the strongest team. They are the sort of team that traditionally the Brumbies, they would be able to bully them. They would get the penalties. Drua, they give away more penalties than anyone else in the competition. So Brumbies, you get the penalty, you kick to the corner, you set the maul, the hooker goes and they rack up the points. But I feel like Brumbies have been on the slide. I feel like last year their maul, it wasn't really a weapon anymore. And with this fixture, the Indrua, they're playing in Fiji. They're super strong in Fiji. And last year, I mean, the Brumbies only beat the Drua by about 8 points in Canberra, so it's not like they was steamrolling them. So I can appreciate the logic, but I'm not fully sold on it with Pollard, and I haven't really watched a guy play, so it's hard for me to really get on board with this. It looks like he didn't get that many minutes last year. I'm guessing we'll probably be seeing more of him this year. And getting 4 tries and 3 line breaks, that is pretty decent for someone who doesn't have a lot of minutes. So definitely do not think this is a bad pick. This is a tough choice to make, but I'll go in with Ricky. I feel like that's a bit more tried and true. The third option is a Canavere. Now, Canavere, if we bring up his stats, he is just simply dynamite around the park. He just racks up points from getting carries, getting tackle busts, Yeah, look at this. Meters carried, like 132 carries for 430 meters. That's more than two for one. And even his carries to his tackle bust ratio, that's a lot better than most front rowers. Isn't a super busy tackler. Does have 5 line breaks and 3 tries. And with their lineouts, their lineouts, it is on the lower end down here. One thing you do have to keep in mind with this fantasy competition is that if you bung up your line out, it's -2. If you do like a not straight or something like that, it is really very punishing. That's something to keep in mind with a kind of vary. Like the enduro line out, it isn't the best. But because he's such a dynamo around the park, definitely one to keep in mind for the right matchup. And look, they're playing in Fiji. Maybe this is the right matchup. I think that's going to be a close game. I tipped the Enduro to win, but I think it could be a scrappy game as well. So your choice. These other choices though, look, a lot of these guys, they're kind of second string hookers. It's hard to rate them. Dave Poruki is one I would give a decent look, but just with these other options here, I don't think a lot of people are doing that, but I do think that the Waratahs front row might be out muscling the Highlanders in this matchup. They might be coming away with more of those scrum points. Who knows? They got Dan McKellar now. He was the guy at the Brumbies when the Brumbies were good at doing mauls, so maybe that's the sort of approach to the game the Waratahs will be looking to this year. And if it is, Poruki is going to be the one to benefit from that. So definitely we'll be keeping an eye on this guy in this fixture. Now we have the locks, and number 1 with being selected by almost 50% of players, we have Scott Barrett. Not surprising in a certain sense. He's probably our number 1 lock these days, even at an international level. I don't really love him as a pick though, and we can see that if we come over to the stats page here. Looking at these stats, he didn't get a lot of game time last year. He was out for a while, but even if you look at his 2023 stats, let's bring that up actually, Okay, here's his 2023 stats, and what you can see is there's some good numbers here, but he's really like more of a defensive lock. We got 2 tries and 3 line breaks here, which is pretty good. You look at the carries and look at how many tackle busts we got, not a huge amount. The amount of meters for those carries, not a huge amount. His tackle completion's excellent. He makes a lot of tackles and, decent amount of turnovers, not really a huge amount. And obviously 40 line out takes. That's probably slightly below average for a lock, but you do get points for line out takes in this game, so it's important to make sure your locks are actually ones that receive a decent amount of throws. The other notable stat for him is line out steals. 2023, it didn't look like he got too many. 2024, he did get a decent amount. And he's in the Crusaders line out, so since the Sam Whitelock days, they've always been able to do their homework on other teams' lineouts and really get up there and do those steals. You see here, he got 5 lineout steals, even with his really limited game time last year. So, yeah, definitely not a bad option, but also, not necessarily a must pick as well. You definitely want to look at this section of guys below him, because we've got guys worth looking at going all the way to down here basically. The locks I have gone for are the next most popular locks, Paddy Toipolotu and Fabian Holland. These are 2 guys that are just pretty decent around the park. Let's bring up their stats here. These are last year's stats, remember, 2024. You can see with Tupolotu just really busy with the carries, line breaks and tries, line out takes, decent meters as well, almost 3-to-1 carries to meters. Not a lot of turnovers. Tackles, not a huge amount. Not a lot of penalties either. So again, it's not blow you away stuff, but pretty solid, and he does get a lot of ball in hand, which can lead to good things. And with Fabian Holland, just look at the tackles. Huge amount of tackles per minute. Not massive amount of ball in hand stuff, but I mean, for 80 carries, his stats are pretty good. And also 11 turnovers as well, which is awesome. You get 4 points for a turnover these years, so the guys who get these, that's really nice to have. Not a huge amount of meters for his carries, but yeah, you can see he's another guy who's really good at being on the other side of the ball. And because he's such tall timber, tracks a huge amount of line out takes as well, and obviously has a couple of steals. So pretty solid stuff here, but again, nothing that should stop you from looking at anyone else here. One interesting pick actually is Cullen Grace, because he is a back rower. He is a number 8. For the fixture this week, he's been picked at as a number 6. Back rowers, they do tend to get a few more points just because they're a bit more effective ball in hand. They get more ball in hand and can get more of those tackle busts. And one nice thing about Cullen Grace is that he also attracts a lot of line out throws as well. So yeah, pretty good meters carried, few tries, 42 line out takes. I mean, that's about as many as a lock. Handful of defenders beaten, and a really high work rate off the ball as well. Makes a lot of tackles with his minutes, so definitely not a bad option. He does have that slightly higher work rate from a fantasy player's perspective. Down here, Walker Leoweri, he's another one that I think is worth looking at, because again, like, he does beat a few more defenders for his carries, get some decent meters, pretty high tackles per minute, like work off the ball, and obviously gets the line out takes as well. So huge amount of penalties though. I don't know what's up with that, but you only get -1 for a penalty in this game, so not really a big deal. We'll look at a couple more here, Akoi and Williams. Not a lot going for Williams here. Looks like he didn't get a huge amount of game time. A lot of line out stolen though, considering, but not much to remark about here. Again, a bit of muchness here. Not a lot of game time for Akoi. Didn't actually attract a lot of line out takes either. So yeah, probably around here. There's not much going on. Another player I kind of skipped over was Josh Lord. The thing about Josh Lord is that it feels like he's just been constantly injured for years, and if you look at the stats on him, it's hard to get a read on anything there. I mean, we know he's a good player. He's really tall timber. He's probably always going to attract a lot of line out throws, but yeah, it's just really hard to gauge with Josh Lord. I would still consider him if the fixture was good for the Chiefs, but in this case they're up against the Blues. So yeah, and in general with all of these picks, honestly, I think it is a bit of muchness. Honestly, they all kind of seem to have pretty similar work rates. So yeah, you really do just want to look at the fixtures, and this week everyone is just in tough fixtures, so I'm sort of going with just who feels good to me. I don't think it's actually going to make that much of a difference, but we'll see. I mean, if Scott Barrett racks up a bunch of huge points, then I know nothing, and that's I'll have to live with that. Now on to the back rowers. This is a very meaty category, not just in general for rugby, but also for fantasy rugby as well. There are just so many good choices in this category. You could really look at players just going all the way down here. I mean, it's really hard to make choices in this category because everyone can provide so many points. And again, I mean, normally with this category, you would look at the fixtures and look for that fixture where there's going to be a cricket score, where the back row is just going to run rampant over the defense. But I mean, this round, it's tricky. There's nothing crazy obvious like that. So again, I will just be trying to make solid picks, just pick good players and hope that their class just pulls through. And if we look at the picks, I mean, 80% of people picking Adi Sevilla. I mean, he's got to be the most popular player in this competition, and I mean, it sort of makes sense. He's Adi Sevilla. He's a really busy player, both sides of the ball, turnovers, tackles, carries, makes tackle busts. He can get tries. Like he does it all and at a high work rate. And he's at Moana Pacific now. He's not at the Hurricanes anymore, and that would probably incline me to pick him a lot less this season. But I mean, this fixture they have in this first round, they are up against the Western Force. So I mean, these are probably the two weakest teams in the competition, and they're playing each other in Perth. And Pacifica, they did beat the Force in Perth last season as well. So I tipped them to do it again. And just in general, this is a game where those Pacifica players, if you ever think they're worth picking, this is the game to do it. This is going to be the one where they're going to have probably an easier time of it. They're going to have more ball in hand, and they're going to be able to use it to break the line and maybe score some points. So that's why I've picked Adi Sevilla, and I think that's why everyone else has picked them as well. And it's kind of hard to look past it. I mean, next most popular pick, Ethan Blackadder at 32%, and I think this pick, I think people think he makes sense for fantasy just because he's a player that's extremely busy, and I mean, he is. You can't argue with that. He doesn't get as many points as you think he would for someone so busy. I mean, he's still pretty good. Last year, he didn't actually get that much game time because he's another guy who's always injured. So, I mean, that always puts a damper on his stats. But I mean, yeah, if you look here, the tackles per minute, the carries per minute, very high. 60 carries, 11 defenders beaten. That's not too bad. 95 meters, not a huge amount of meters. Did get a couple of tries. Didn't get a lot of line out takes. Doesn't get too many turnovers, but yeah, these tackles would be adding up. So he's decent. And it's all just based on this work rate here, these per minute stats. But maybe he doesn't get the payout from them that you would expect someone with that work rate does. Like, he's carrying a lot, but he's not destroying the line and running over people necessarily. So I don't think he justifies this 30% pick here, but the way he plays, it'll make him consistent at least. Now, next three picks rather, we have the 3 7s from probably the 3 strongest teams, Karifi, Papali'i, and Luke Jacobson. These guys are all solid choices. With these 7s, they all just rack up huge amounts of tackles, and that makes them consistent point scorers. The difference between these 3 guys is pretty subtle. They all make huge amounts of tackles. They kind of cancel each other out there, so the difference between them is ball in hand. And like Jacobson and Papali'i, Jacobson, he carries more, but Papali'i, when he carries, he's more effective. And you can see this in the stats. Like he gets more tackle busts per carry basically, and Jacobson, He's probably listed as an 8, but I mean, you can see here, 0.18 tackles per minute, very high. Carries per minute, 0.7, quite low. 83 carries for 22 defenders beaten. I mean, that's a 4-to-1 ratio. That's pretty good. 9 turnovers, that's pretty solid for a 7. It's not a huge amount, but it's not a low amount. Quite good amount of line breaks and tries here. Doesn't get line out takes. These 7s usually don't. And that's something important to remember as well, because you don't have to pick 7s in this back row. And I am inclined to 8s just because they do tend to get they get the same amount of line out takes as a lock. So that's a lot of bonus points for them, especially if they have high work rates in other areas as well. So I'm not sure whether open side flankers are going to be excellent choices, but we'll see. We'll look at Carriffy's stats here, see how they compare to Dalton. Slightly higher tackles per minute, much higher carries per minute, but I mean, exact same amount of carries last year, but half the defenders beaten as Dalton, less turnovers, did get an extra try though, and less meters as well. And very, very similar over here as well. So pretty similar options from a fantasy and a statistics perspective. As you can see in my choices, I've just bypassed all of these 7s, even though they're all pretty solid, and I've gone for Braden Yosei. And I mean, I'll bring up his stats and you can see why he comes up straight away. Bring up Leo Willie as well, because he's another starting player. And yeah, like 0.16 tackles per minute, 0.18 carries per minute. I mean, those are really high work rates. 150 carries for 664 meters. That's a lot of carries per meter. That's more than the 3-to-1 of Leo Willie, for example, even though Leo Willie has an even higher carries per minute rate. And yeah, you can see in the stats, the carries to defenders beaten as well. Very high for Braden USA. Not a huge amount of turnovers for these guys. Handful of line out takes. Not that many. Crusaders, when they throw to the back row, it tends to go to Cullen Grace a bit more. Hurricanes, they don't throw to their back row a huge amount in general, for whatever reason. Very high tackle completion rates for both of these players. And you do have to look at that. You don't just look at the tackles, because you do lose 1 point for missed tackles in this fantasy competition. So you want both of these numbers to be high. So yeah, that's why I've gone for Yosei over these 7s, and obviously over Leo Willie as well, who I don't think is a bad option, just because again, he's super busy with the carries. But I definitely prefer Yosei. Further down, we got Carlo Tizzano. I mean, he's another 7 that just makes an immense amount of tackles. I think he was the top tackler last year, and it's because he's at the force. Like they spend a lot of time without the ball in hand. They spend a lot of time defending, and Carlo he just lines them up and knocks them down. And once we get sort of below here, we're sort of getting into the mid-tier. I feel like there definitely are good players here though. Raima, Suafoa, Ekoasi, big athlete. So we'll see how these players go after round 1, man. Again, because there isn't really any standout fixtures for scoring points, I'm just sticking with players who I know to be strong and hoping that they pull through with the points. Now on to halfback, and really Cam Roigard, he's running away with it, selected by 64% of players. In my mind, this position, it really is a bit of a 2-horse race for this week especially, but probably in general. These 2 are going to be the halfbacks to go with, and it's simply because they both snipe a lot. So the thing about the halfback position in fantasy is that they kick a lot, they pass a lot. You don't get points for any of those things. So the halfbacks that actually carry the ball, that snipe, they're the ones who, you know, they get those tackle busts, they get the offloads, they get the line breaks, they get the assists, and that's the edge that you want from a player in these positions. Now, these other halfbacks aren't bad. I mean, Jake Gordon probably deserves the third spot here. And look, if you like the Tars in that matchup a lot, maybe you could go for him, but it's really hard to look past Roygaard and Hotham, and I will be picking both of these players just depending on the fixture each week, who's up against weaker opposition or more vulnerable opposition. This week they happen to be playing each other, and you should probably go whichever way you think this match is going to go. If you think the Crusaders are going to pull away, go Hotham. Otherwise, go Roygaard. I think it's going to be close, and that makes me go Roygaard anyway, because I think just in general, Roygaard is slightly better. Like, he does everything. He doesn't just snipe, which is pretty much what Hotham does. He really does just snipe. That's his thing. But Roygaard, he does that and more. And I think he's just the more solid option, so I've gone with him. Now at fly half, we have another battle of the Titans. By far and away at the top, we've got Damian McKenzie, followed by Bowden Barrett. They also happen to be playing against each other week 1. But the interesting thing here is, I think Damian McKenzie, he's going to be the pick for the fly half slot this year. Bowden Barrett, I really don't think is a good pick at all. And the reason for that is that he kicks a lot. He kicks a lot. When he's not kicking long, he's kicking short. He's kicking to someone else. So that doesn't get you a huge amount of points in fantasy. For fantasy, you want those greedy players who hold on to the ball and carry it and get those tackle busts, those offloads, those line breaks, those assists. And that's exactly what Damian McKenzie does. He plays with ball in hand. He kicks when he has to, but he prefers strongly to play ball in hand. He'll crab across the field. He'll look for gaps. That means tackle busts, that means line breaks, offloads, assists, and that is what we want in fantasy. On top of that, from this 10 slot, you want someone who is a goal kicker as well, because that's just free points. Damian McKenzie, he's the Chiefs goal kicker. Chiefs are a very strong team. They score a lot of tries, get a lot of conversions, get shots at goal. Damian McKenzie last year, he was the top point scorer for the whole competition. That's why he's going to be the number 1 pick for fantasy. I can't see myself really picking Barrett, but we have to see how he plays for the Blues. I can't see Vern Cotter wanting him to play his kicking game at the Blues, or at least I imagine he would use it much more surgically and sparingly. So there's a bit of wait and see here with how Bowden ends up playing. Third on the list is Noel Olesio, who I think is also a very good pick. Again, he's a goal kicker, and this week they're up against the Ndrua in Fiji. I think that will be a tough matchup for them, but the Ndrua, again, they get penalized more than anybody else. That can mean shots at goal for Lolosio. If the game is tough, I expect they will go for those shots rather than going for the sideline. They probably will try the sideline, see if they get their maul going. That's what they've done in previous years. But like I keep saying, they're not actually that good at that anymore. So we'll wait and see. But yeah, Lolosio, definitely not a bad choice this week. Hard to look past McKenzie. Also note McKenzie, he's playing at fullback this week as well. Same as Bowden Barrett. Neither of them are actually playing at fly half. I think that kind of works better for both of them because, again, like I was saying with halfback, with the 10s, generally they kick a lot, they pass a lot. You don't get points in fantasy for either of those things. But when you're at fullback, you get to hold the ball and carry it. And you know, when you're coming from deep, you got more space to work with. You can be that first defender. You can create line breaks. That's fantasy point scoring opportunities. So yeah, I do. It's hard to look past McKenzie this week, even though it is a really tough match between the Chiefs and the Blues. I mean, it could just end up being, you know, another Blues forwards grindfest affair. McKenzie gets no ball. He doesn't get points, but, you know, we have to wait and see. Now, these other options, Harry Plummer and Down. I mean, Josh Jacob here starting at 10 for the Chiefs. Garden Bishop. I mean, Pacifica, they're playing the Force. I mean, they might be scoring points here. But, yeah. Caleb Muntz for the Endura. Yeah, hard to justify these picks down here. But yeah, we'll see what happens after round 1 with them. Now onto the midfield, and some interesting stuff happening here. 55% of players picking Joseph Suali'i, the guy who hasn't even played Super Rugby before. This will be his debut season. I mean, we saw his debut for the Wallabies. It was amazing. Can he back it up over a season of Super Rugby? I mean, yeah, I think he will go well. He's clearly a talent, but I mean, yeah, like it's hard to put that much faith into him. I mean, how good are the Waratahs going to be this year, really? They're going to be on the up. They've recruited well, but I don't know if he's going to be the best midfielder in fantasy or in the round, but we're going to find out. He's not even playing in the midfield this game. He's actually starting at fullback, I believe, and I do like fullbacks. They get those free running meters, and I feel like he will run the ball. They will be giving him freedom at fullback to just look for space and attack and use his instincts and do his thing. So I feel like he will go well there, but I'm still not 100% sure how fullbacks are going to compare to midfielders just in terms of average points. I mean, obviously it will depend a lot on the team and the matchup as well. So there's a lot to be revealed with this top pick. The next biggest pick, Rieko Ioane at 31%. I'm not a big fan of this pick at all. I think that's a terrible pick. I think being a 13 at the Blues is just the worst place to be in a backline to get points in fantasy in this whole competition. Just the way the Blues play now, their midfielders, they're like extra forwards. They just want the midfielders to hit the ball up and just buy time so that the forwards can reload and reset their pods and get back to the grind. The Blues, like, they're just not spreading the ball that much, and when they do, they just want to get it to their wings. So yeah, I mean, Rieko Ioane, I feel like he is not going to be a good pick this year. I don't think it was a good pick last year either. I don't think his stats were very good, but he was injured for several weeks. He had that ongoing concussion stand down, I believe, for quite a few weeks. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Pretty dicey pick in my book, and let's see if I get proven wrong. Next cab up the rank, 18%, Quinn Tupaia. Interesting pick. I would not have picked him to be so popular. I can sort of see why, because he plays that battering ram style. He just runs a million miles an hour into the defense, and that style of play, it can get the tackle bus. We look at his stats, 108 carries for almost 500 meters. Pretty okay, I guess. 23 defenders beaten out of 108 carries. Isn't super impressive. A lot of turnovers though for a back. That's a nice to have. And probably an above average tackle rate for a midfielder, I would say, even though it doesn't look that great at 76%. But yeah, looking at these stats, not a lot to see here, I have to say. Quintupai, he wasn't someone on my mind initially when thinking about midfielders, but interesting to see how many people have picked him, and will be interesting to see how he goes. David Haveli, 18%, another stalwart. I don't think, I just feel like his stats are not going to be great. I mean, part of that is, the Crusaders, they had a terrible year, but yeah, 72 carries for 15 tackle busts, not amazing. 72 carries for 180 meters, that's, not particularly good. No tries, 3 line breaks, 68% tackle rate for 56 tackles. Yeah, not a lot going on here, stats wise. Not an amazing pick in my opinion. And I have gone with Masi. I think Masi's amazing. He won't actually show up in the midfield stats here because I think he comes under one of the wings, and the stat system it is, here he is, he comes under right wing. But yeah, I mean, look here, 150 carries for 950 meters, 0.13 carries per minute, 12 line breaks, 7 tries, 80 defenders beaten for 150 carries, like 2-to-1. That's a very good ratio. Tackling, not terrible. Couple of turnovers, not much to write about there. Does get penalized a lot like everyone in the drawer, but again, that's only -1 in this fantasy game. So yeah, I mean, Yosefo Masi, he is just a weapon by himself, and I am back in the drawer in this game. I think it'll be a close game, and hopefully he'll go well with it. And at the moment, I do have him as my captain. I think he is not a bad option for my captain, just because none of the hookers this week seem particularly amazing, but I haven't made a final decision on this yet, so we'll see. But yeah, I think Masi's not a bad option. Definitely had more good options down here. I was looking at Balin's stats before, didn't get a lot of game time, but again, he had good ratios of carries to tackle busts. Levi Almoa, I mean, he's obviously a physical beast. His stats aren't actually that bad, but yeah, obviously the Crusaders, they struggled last year, and he suffered for it. But if they can work out how to get this guy just a little bit of space, I mean, we know how devastating he can be. We saw that at Moana in 2023. He looked so good at 13 in a struggling team, and yeah, look at this. Like, again, it's like a 2-to-1 carry to tackle bust ratio, decent meters, and yeah, like he's just a beast with ball in hand. Tanielu Talia, he's a guy to keep an eye on, I think. He was another guy who got injured early on last year, but he was looking really good up until that point. He looks like a really damaging runner in the midfield, so pay attention to him. Rona and Faketi, not too bad, but yeah, I think this is where your options start to fall off a little bit in terms of who's been selected this week. So yeah, lots of good options here. The takeaway is stay away from Ioane, have a look at Masi, Suali'i, big unknown, but because the other options here, I mean, they're not amazing. If you feel like taking a punt, Suali'i might not be a bad idea, and that's what I'm doing. Now we have the back three, the big glamour category, and your most popular option here, Will Jordan for the Crusaders. Didn't play last season, now he's back. Amazing player, we've all seen him in the black jersey, we know what he can do. He can do it all by himself, he can do it in combination with his team. Like, he just finds his way to the line. He's got so much pace, he can just get to where the opportunity is. And yeah, I mean, how could you turn down a player like this? Well, that's what I've done. Could end up looking kind of stupid for this one, but again, I'm just not sure how the fullbacks sort of shake out compared to the midfielders and the wingers. Like the fullbacks, they're gonna get those run meters. Is that enough to give them the edge? I don't know. Next biggest pick, Mark Talia at 48%. And I mean, this one's no surprise either. He racked up huge amounts of points last season along with Caleb Clark, and he's one of those guys, he's just a tackle bust machine because yeah, he just goes into traffic and seems to twist and turn and come out the other side, and that's the sort of thing that scores points in this game. And on top of that, he gets line breaks, he gets tries. Like he's in a good position in a really strong team, and he's benefiting from it massively, just on top of his own talents as well. So only reason I haven't gone for Talia this week is because of the matchup against the Chiefs. Like he didn't really feature heavily in that grand final last year, and it's just because like the way they took the Chiefs to task, it was all about that forwards grind, and that was it. And to be fair, that wasn't the wet. We do have wet weather coming later in the weekend, but it shouldn't be here by Friday. Conditions should be good on Friday and Saturday, so might be a different story in this game. We'll see. Again, I might be stupid for passing on this one, but I mean, again, like with the back three, there's so many live options, many players that have huge upsides, so it's really tricky to pick which one. And again, I keep saying this, like there's no fixtures where it's gonna be super obvious that the backs are just gonna run rampant. So going with guys like Sevu Reece, I mean, I feel like Sevu Reece is a guy who's always gonna do well because we saw him do so well last year for the Crusaders when they were absolutely awful. Just nothing was going well for that team. But this guy, he can just do things by himself. He gets the ball, like takes off backwards, he grabs around, and then he just finds his way on the other side. He's got a line break, he's doing offloads, he's scoring tries. Like he's just, when you don't know if a game is gonna favor the team or not, you can pick Sevu Reece and he's going to be a safe bet. Whereas yeah, with the Will Jordan, like if the game doesn't go the Crusaders way, if it does favor the Hurricanes, and I did tip the Crusaders for this game, but I do think it will be close. Like it's going to be a messy game. There's so many injuries on both teams. They're both missing key players, but yeah, if the game isn't going the Crusaders way, I just don't know. I don't know how things are going to go for Will Jordan. I don't know if he'll get a lot of ball. I mean, when these teams played last year, I think the Crusaders actually won, but from what I remember, it was a really grindy game. The Hurricanes had a lot of ball and the Crusaders had to do a lot of defending. So it just, yeah, if you're stuck on the back foot, you're not getting the ball, then no matter how good your fullback is, he's not going to get that many points. But with Sevu Reece, like it doesn't seem to matter. The guy just gets the ball and he makes things happen, and that's why he was top try scorer last year, top offloads, like dominated a lot of stats that are good for fantasy. So I think I just feel comfortable picking him here, and that's why I've gone with him. My other picks are Callaway and Corey Toole, both very strong players if you look at their stats, and maybe I can bring them up. So here are the stats for Andrew Callaway, and yeah, you can see it for yourself. 100 carries, 700 meters, 50 tackle busts. I mean, that's again, that 2-to-1 ratio, that's very good. 6 tries, 10 line breaks, tackles not that great, but whatever, not a huge thing for the backs in terms of fantasy. And yeah, just really good offensive stats. And I do feel like that Waratahs Highlanders game, it might be more of an open game than than these other ones like Canes Crusaders and Blues Chiefs. I feel like those ones could be tighter, more grindier games, whereas Tars Highlanders could be a bit more open. And I feel like if you're going to go for a Waratah in the backs, like, yeah, Callaway, he's the one. And again with Corey Toole, let me see if I can find his stats. So here's Corey Toole's stats, and yeah, again, like, good run meters, good tackle bust ratio, gets a few turnovers here and there, and just a huge amount of line breaks because he's super fast, and also got a lot of tries to boot as well. Again, pretty sloppy on the tackle side, but not a big deal for our fantasy selections here. So again, with that and draw a matchup, I think there might be more opportunities in that matchup than there are in these, Chiefs, Blues, Crusaders, Canes, really tough games. So that's what made me go with Corey Toole. But yeah, I mean, there's so many good players here. Sam Gilbert is actually an interesting one because I believe he's starting at fullback for the Highlanders, but he probably will be their kicker because the Highlanders, I think at 10, they're starting Tane Robinson. Maybe he will do the kicking. Maybe he's a good kicker. I'm not actually sure, but I know Sam Gilbert, he's kicked in the past, and yeah, there's a good chance he could be doing it this game as well. So having fullback in a matchup where there might be some decent points on offer, who is also a kicker, it's sort of like, it's a bit of a freebie. So we'll look for his stats and see what he looks like on paper. So on paper, I mean, he's not as good as these other backs we've looked at. Sort of got that 1-3 carries to meters ratio, 23 defenders beaten from 100 carries, makes a huge amount of tackles. Yeah, I mean, and a bunch of turnovers as well. So I guess the story is here that he spends a lot of time on defense, and he's actually pretty good on defense. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of a strange place to be for a fantasy pick. I don't really like him after seeing those stats. Even with some likely shots at goal points he will probably get. And I feel like once you get down around here, you're sort of getting to where your viable picks sort of end. Shafi Haki's decent, but he's been pushed out of the 14 by Will Jordan. I feel like Will Jordan's really gonna take whatever points Haki might have got. Leroy Carter, interesting prospect, sevens player, pretty awesome to see him playing, to see how he goes in 15. Same with Tangitau, again, another sevens player. Like, these guys are both really talented athletes. If you get the ball to them in space, they will use their speed and they will do the damage. And Tangitau, he's moved down to the Highlanders. He should get some real game time now. So definitely one to keep an eye on. Jorgensen also very good as well. Harry Godfrey's actually playing 10 this week for the Hurricanes. I don't know if we've seen him play 10 before, at least not at Super Rugby level. So interested to see how that goes. I don't think being at 10 helps you get more points. You get more touches, but you're just making more passes and doing more kicks. You're not getting those free run meters like you do at fullback. AJ Lamb, kind of interesting. He does play a sort of style where you can get a lot of tackle busts. Let's just try and find his stats to see. Okay, yeah, so here's his stats. 83 meters, 83 carries, 450 meters, 31 defenders beaten, 8 turnovers. Yeah, these are pretty good offensive stats. 6 tries, 12 line breaks. Very good, actually. So makes a lot of tackles at a decent clip as well. So yeah, definitely good stats on paper there. He was actually a winger who Vern Cotter, he converted into a midfielder, and I believe that's what most of these stats will represent. He just plays a bit of a battering ram in the midfield, but he's one of those guys with a bit of that stocky sort of frame, so he's really good at going into contact and just powering through people. So yeah, again, definitely not a bad option here either. But again, he's in a tough matchup against the Chiefs. It's probably going to be against the last year, the Blues. They're going to try and keep it in the forwards and grind them down. And AJ Lamb, I mean, he does get some ball in those types of games because, again, the midfield gets used a bit to give the forwards some time to just sort of to reset and get their structure going again. So could be a good game for him. Not sure. We'll see. You tell me. Look, I mean, again, a couple more good players here. Kenny Naholo, Nanai Saturo. Again, they're just in tough matches. If you like the Hurricanes against the Crusaders, you might look at Naholo because he's probably your best option out of the Hurricanes back three. I'm tipping the Satyrs in that game, so I'm not really looking at him. And again, with Nanai Saturo, I think with McKenzie at the back, I think McKenzie's going to sort of take it on himself. He's either going to kick the ball or he's going to take on the defenders himself, and maybe Nanai Saturo will benefit from that. Maybe McKenzie will be the assist and Saturo will be the beneficiary, but maybe the Blues just end up hogging all the possession in their forwards and grinding, and the Chiefs just don't get the ball at the back. So yeah, I'm really not looking at Chiefs back three for this week. Might be a different story if Narawa was there, but he's on the bench. So, oh, actually, the other big pick is Tavatava Naiwai, third big pick at 25%. And yeah, he's definitely not a bad option. In fact, I was picking him before I decided against it. And again, maybe I'm gonna look stupid for that, but let's try and find his stats. So here he is, 124 carries, 750 meters, 54 defenders beaten, and the stat here, 13 turnovers. He's a turnover specialist in the backs, and that's just a nice thing to have. Like, these are worth 4 points each, so they kind of, yeah, they just up these a bit more. 6 line breaks, 5 tries, pretty good. There are guys with more line breaks. I mean, at the end of the day, he is at the Highlanders. He's only going to benefit from so much. But again, I think the Highlanders are a team on the up this year, but I'd rather just wait and see how much on the up they are. But like I said, I do like that Highlanders Tars matchup for some points in fantasy. So really wouldn't argue with the Tavatava Nawai pick here either. So that's my whole team. Let me know what you think about it. Let me know what picks you've made instead. And don't forget, you got to have your team locked in by 7 o'clock tonight, New Zealand time. If you miss that, you can still join in before the next game. So it wouldn't actually be the end of the world if you miss one game. The players who played in that game get locked out, but you can still build a full team from players that are yet to come. So don't panic if you happen to be watching this a bit late. But hopefully we get some good games this round one. Once the round is over, I probably will review the games individually and then review what's happened in fantasy, who the movers and shakers are. That'll come out early next week, so I'll see you then.